tax and investment planning together. Visit alphawealthgroup.com for a free report.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So it's all politics now after Barr's press conference yesterday. And part of, though, the political calculation is an assessment of the strength of the underlying substance of the case you have to make. And one wonders, with a majority, it seems, of her caucus hell-bent on moving forward with impeachment post-haste, is it they don't feel like they have a strong case? Pelosi and the Democrats I'm talking about. Is it they...
Are they worried about the 2020 election?
Well, of course they are. They're worried about that. So the question is, do they feel like Trump is... It's going to boomerang on them, it's going to increase his popularity? Or that their case is too weak for them to erode his popularity, knowing they're not going to be able to secure a conviction in the Senate, so he's going to be on the ballot in 2020. Interesting perspective on the 2020 election from Alan Lichtman. He's a poli-sci professor at American U. He's 9 in a row. He's the guy who established 13 criteria for predicting presidential elections, and he's predicted the last 9 presidential elections correctly.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Right. And he suggests
what?
that the only chance Democrats have right now, he's not making a prediction on the election because there's not an opponent yet, so he doesn't make the prediction until it's one-on-one.
Because smarter choice, yes.
But he's suggesting Trump's in a pretty good position right now. In fact, the only thing that Democrats have in terms of a chance to defeat him is to move forward with impeachment.
Unless the Democrats grow a spine and do their constitutional duty and move into an impeachment inquiry, and I think the evidence will show ultimately an impeachment. It's a false dichotomy to say Democrats have a choice between doing what is right and what is constitutional and what is politically right. Impeachment is also politically right. Right now, based on my system, there has to be 6 negative factors against the party holding the White House, the Trump party, to predict their defeat. They're down only 3. But an impeachment would nail down the scandal key, a 4th key. It might trigger other keys like a real challenge to his renomination or a third party enough to defeat him. And let's not forget, impeachment is not just a vote in the House. It involves public hearings as part of the impeachment inquiry, and what everyone forgets, a public trial in the Senate in which House prosecutors present evidence, present documents, make opening and closing statements. You know, Richard Nixon, before all the public revelations, was at 67% approval. It was the public revelations of his misdeeds that drove him down to 25%.
Yeah, that's true, but this is, these comparisons are never perfectly on point. The problem the Democrats have here is there's almost nothing that hasn't been revealed, that hasn't been leaked and obsessed about, and sawdust that hasn't been sawed over and over again, including yesterday at Mueller's press conference. And every time they do so, those that seek the impeachment of Trump, and Bob Mueller clearly indicated he was one of them, they seem to weaken their case, not strengthen it. They don't present new facts. They talk about evidence that never gets presented, and then they just make the arguments. They just make declarations. They don't make arguments. They just take positions. They don't make a case. A bit different than what happened during Watergate, with all due respect to the professor. But let's assess the politics of this with our friend Matthew Continetti. He's the editor of the Washington Free Beacon and a contributor to National Review. And he also recently had a good piece in Primus, the Hillsdale College publication. Matthew, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good to be here.
So what about the politics of this, particularly as it pertains to the question Republicans seem to be kicking around as to whether or not they should push for Mueller to appear before, say, Lindsey Graham's committee in the Senate, and whether Pelosi should wait much longer. Can she wait much longer to pursue a formal inquiry in the House?
First on Mueller, I think the Republicans might want Mueller to testify more than the Democrats do, even though if he is compelled to testify or if he just shows up voluntarily after they ask, I think he's given every indication he won't say anything but what he has already said. I was struck when Jerry Nadler had his press conference after Mueller's statement the other day. Nadler basically showed no interest in calling Mueller. And I think that was a sign from the Democrats that Mueller is no longer much use to them. They're either going to have to try to redo the Mueller investigation, which is why they've subpoenaed Don McGahn and Hope Hicks, for example, or they're going to have to find some other set of facts to impeach Trump. And that is why I think many of the committees are going after Trump's financial statements, records, tax returns, and such.
What did you make of Mueller's 9-minute speech, or whatever you want to call that?
Well, I thought it was odd. I thought the main news of it was that he's resigning and that he didn't want to talk to Congress. And I also believe he's just wrong. He could have said whether he had found that Trump committed obstruction of justice.
Mm-hmm.
The OLC regulations did not prevent Leon Jaworski, the second and final special prosecutor in Watergate, from saying that Richard Nixon had obstructed justice. And they didn't prevent, in the case of the independent counsel, Ken Starr, in the Monica Lewinsky investigation, from saying that his evidence showed that President Clinton had perjured himself and obstructed justice. Instead, Mueller gave this kind of long legal seminar in the second volume of his report, where he says, well, we're not saying he committed a crime, but we're also saying he did not commit a crime. Well, you have to say something, or else it just leaves everybody confused, and moreover, it punts the issue to Congress, which I think is what Mueller wanted. But at the same time, I don't think the evidence in the Mueller report is enough for the Democrats to impeach Trump on obstruction, and that Nancy Pelosi knows it, and that's why she's resisting the calls from some portion of her Congress to begin the impeachment proceeding.
It's also something where the Dem presidential candidates, some of them are weighing in. Some of them are weighing in with some vigor, like Beto O'Rourke, who's trying to get back into the race. But a lot of those that are perceived to be top-tier candidates, I mean, they'll respond if asked, but they're not making it central to what they're talking about, and that seems to be a leading indicator as well.
Right. No, the polls are clear. The public is against impeachment, and not just Republicans, independents, and of course, independents decide the future of American politics. And until those numbers move, I think Pelosi is going to try to continue to hold the door against impeachment. Now, that's why they're pursuing this investigation track, and they're hoping that something might come out of these investigations that will change those numbers. But so far, I don't see it. And this is where I disagree with Professor Lichtman, who I believe the 13 Keys are a great model, and it's a great book that he wrote in the 1980s explaining them. I think the scandal keys basically already turned. I don't think impeachment will make any difference. I think that's baked in. But that's still not enough. And his whole argument there is that, you need impeachment to unlock other keys to defeat Trump. And so far, that isn't happening either. So as of now, all of the models show that Trump is favored to win re-election. Of course, we still have a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. You wrote a piece that sort of asking the question and then developing the thought process. Is Biden the new Hillary? Has Biden retained Christopher Steele? Is that what you're getting at? Or?
Yeah.
Well,
right.
just that he's been around for so long, right? He's been, 50 years?
Well,
and
he's
what
been
has he
around
accomplished?
for so long. I think there's a lot that's going to come out about some of his son's business activities. It's already started in terms of what Hunter Biden was up to in Ukraine and China.
Yeah.
That's similar to kind of the Clinton Foundation stuff. There's his record. If you look at how Trump is attacking Biden, it's exactly how Trump attacked Hillary in 2016, and that is he's going after Biden's support for NAFTA and free trade, and he's also going after Biden's vote for the 1994 crime bill. Now, look, I believe the crime bill was right, and definitely a reasoned response to what was happening in the inner cities in particular at that time. But these attacks were effective in driving wedges between Hillary Clinton and some important Democratic voters, the African American community in the case of the crime bill, and then the white working class in the case of NAFTA. And even though Democrats don't win the white working class, they need about 40% nationally to be competitive in a presidential election. Trump drove that number down. It didn't even reach 40%. So he's basically running the same campaign against Biden that he ran against Hillary. And I believe that after 12 months of this, Biden is going to have to be a really strong candidate to break out of the mold that Donald Trump is putting him in.
Well, I also sort of am entertained by the D.C. press corps' promotion of Biden as sort of the presumptive front runner. I mean, really the presumptive nominee, much less front runner. I mean, he's within the margin of error in Iowa with Bernie, and Bernie being from the Northeast. If Bernie were to win Iowa, then those numbers in New Hampshire can flip overnight. I mean, this is not like some runaway for Biden right now.
Not in the states. That's right. I mean, Biden's lead is very large nationally. The states are much closer. And you hit it on the head when you say if Sanders wins Iowa. And, of course, right now we're in the invisible primary. Nothing is actually happening except that you have kind of the polls and you have the candidates running for getting donations and trying to get activist support and endorsements. Once the voting actually starts next year, that's the real primary. And what happens in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina, that will determine who the nominee is. I know that many people are saying, oh, it could last forever, or, oh, really what California is going to play. I don't know. I'm a traditionalist. I'm a conservative. I think the first three states are what matter. And the nominees of both parties always come from one of those three states, especially if you win two of the three, then you're basically the nominee.
What do you make of Biden? He can't stop touching people. I mean, after all this, and then he released his apology via Twitter and other social media outlets. Then on Tuesday, he's grabbing the shoulders of a little girl, telling her, "I bet you're as pretty as you are bright."
Well,
I mean, can somebody stop him? Because it's unbelievable to me that after all this and his smelling of people's hair and inappropriate touch and getting in their personal space, that he hasn't learned his lesson.
He thinks he's being grandfatherly, and he comes across as the clown from It.
It's very hard for a 70-year-old man, a man in his late 70s, to change, and this is what he's running up against. Biden has the strengths, I think, of being considered electable, the most electable candidate within the Democratic Party. That's counting for a lot among Democrats. Obviously, everybody knows him. He has a high likability among Democrats, but he also has real weaknesses. And look, this is his third presidential run. The first two were disasters, and right now he's running a very limited campaign. He has very few public events. He has no media interactions, and it will really be this first debate next month or in just a few weeks. Where he's going to be challenged for the first time. We haven't seen how he'll hold up, and he has to go against these impressions of kind of being a creepy old guy on the one hand, or someone who's been in D.C. forever and who's not representative of kind of the current state of the Democratic Party on the other.
Looking past 2020, I know everybody else wants to just look to 2020. Let's look past it for fun. And the prospect that if Trump were to be reelected, that Republicans could take back the House. What's the sort of the inside the Beltway handle on that? The odds makers' opinion on that, because if you don't get the House back, and obviously if you don't hold the Senate as well, then we're going to probably be in this same churn that we're in now with respect to trying to get anything done substantively on, say, immigration policy.
Right. Well, I think it's possible because people forget how narrow the Democratic majority is. It's only 17 seats. So that's possible. And those are Republican districts. I mean, really make the difference. Republican districts that elected a Democrat in 2018. On the other hand, a lot of those districts went for the Democrats out of a version of President Trump, and he, of course, will be still at the top of the ticket in 2020. And in a presidential race, all of the attention and, most importantly, the money goes to either the presidential candidates or the battle for the Senate, where even though I think it's increasingly out of reach, Democrats still want a chance. With the resources at the presidential and the Senate levels, that might mean that not enough time and money is devoted to the House. So I think it's possible for the Republicans to take out the House, but I wouldn't say it's likely at this point.
He is Matthew Continetti, editor of the Washington Free Beacon, contributor to National Review. Check out his piece, Is Biden the New Hillary? Matthew, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.